Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Geeks Love Lists. My name is Brendyn Lotz, and joining me is Luis Monzon.
Hey, guys.
And Robin-Leigh Chetty.
Howdy.
How are you guys doing in the blistering heat of Johannesburg that we are currently experiencing?
It's not going well right now. I'll tell you that for free.
And yourself, Robin?
Nursing a cold in this heat. So not great because I can't use any fans, but we persevere.
Yeah, and water crisis throughout Johannesburg. It's
Potholes.
world-class African city. I believe they've dropped that moniker now, have they?
I think they dropped the first C and L from world class.
Right, so today we've all watched Dune Part 2 and we are absolutely enamored by it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic piece
Pure
of cinema.
cinema.
Yeah, pure cinema. And we thought that we would take a look back, all the way back to David Lynch's original film, Dune, which I think everybody agrees, including David Lynch himself, that it wasn't really the best movie. And for today's episode of Geeks Love Lists, we wanted to sit down and chat about remakes. And some good remakes, some bad remakes, some upcoming remakes, and remakes that we'd like to see of some media that was really popular or really influential back in its day. And but I think the first thing to jump off about is Dune Part 2. Robin, you were unfortunately at MWC, I say unfortunately, but you were at MWC when the movie launched, but you saw it this weekend. What were your thoughts following the first one?
Brilliant. Superior to the first, and that's saying a lot because the first is unbelievable in my view.
Yeah. We're talking about Part 1 here.
Yeah, sorry, Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
Just the choice of shots, and I think the more I reflected on the film, some of the elements, because I don't want to give any spoilers because obviously some people haven't seen it yet, but some of the elements that Denis Villeneuve chose to change from the books, because I think that was one of the criticisms of the David Lynch one. It was perhaps a oversimplification or trying to be just a pure interpretation of the film, not necessarily trying to add any nuance to it. Frank Herbert's Dune obviously is beloved within the sci-fi genre community of books and stuff like that, but it's not a perfect book. There are elements to it that can be improved upon. I think
It's a weird book.
Yeah, very weird. If Warner Brothers continues on this franchise, it will get very, very, very weird.
It's going to start touching the R18 part, I feel like, if they continue.
But yeah, what I really loved about the film is that Denis kind of put his own kind of spin on things and also kind of potentially set up an entire franchise as well. And I think he didn't shy away from some of the criticisms around religion that Dune tries to set up. So yeah, I really enjoyed it overall. Some really great performances. Austin Butler really impressed me. I wasn't a big Elvis fan, but he really impressed me with his Fade Arthur. I liked Florence Pugh as Prince Arlen. She was quite good. And yeah, just a visual spectacle. It was awesome.
Yeah. And Louis, what did you think?
I agree with a lot of the points that Robin said. It's such a watchable 3-hour movie. You know, it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. It goes from one important scene to the next. If there was one criticism I could point to is that its ensemble cast just doesn't get enough time to be great. A lot of the characters, they get little snippets here and there. But for what they got, I think, you know, it's tough to condense so much in so little time. But it's, super great, just great cinema, just over-the-top spectacle. Everything you kind of want, you know. There wasn't anything that I was left wanting afterwards. I was like, man, that hit all the points that I was looking for. It's just such a good representation of, you know, Frank Herbert's universe. And it's... Robin mentioned that Denis doesn't shy away from, you know, some of the more meta concept, you know, the religious stuff. What he does shy away from is the stuff that the original Dune film, the David Lynch one, just wholeheartedly accepts, and I think to the detriment of that film, some of the weirder stuff. So David Lynch if you guys seen that movie,
Yes.
there's a weird. So the way that they fly through space,
Oh, the
Yeah.
Spacing Guild
The
words.
navigator.
the
Yeah.
navigators, the way that it's described in the book is, I mean, David Lynch kind of represent that to the T.
Yeah.
It's basically these weird worm guys.
Who are like fed spice.
Yeah, they spit into the universe, and it's like a weird hypnosis thing. And Villeneuve is like, let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not get into the weird
let's
stuff.
not get into the super weird stuff. I think, like Brendyn said, if they go into in the next few movies, you know, God Emperor of Dune and stuff, they're gonna have to deal with the weird stuff. But I think overall, I'm really excited to see what comes next in this whole Dune thing.
I think what's great about it is that it feels like a remake that was done right. Even if like as you say, Louis, they left out the weirder elements of Dune. Like I think it's just a really good reboot from what we got from David Lynch. And I mean, I suppose David Lynch at the time was hamstrung by what cinema was capable of back then. And Denis has just the height of technology as we know it to make this movie and just do amazing things. But it does beg the question of, are there good remakes? Are there good reboots? Because I think a lot of the time we sit here and go, oh, are they rebooting this? Hollywood doesn't have any original ideas anymore. They just keep going back to the same stuff and rebooting it. And well, I think that in a lot of instances that may be the case. We're going to get to a few of these on our list where it's bad what is done. There's no respect for the source material. There's no kind of callback to what made those things good. I think what Dune benefited from was that the original David Lynch movie is kind of a meme, you know, with the weird visual effects. So it is a bit of it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, oh, this was Dune, it's the best Dune movie we got.
And Sting, half-naked Sting, you know, sweaty and...
I don't see a problem.
But I think there's respect there for what Denis did. Was he respected the source material, he respected what came before him and crafted his vision and made the movie into his vision. But I think we have some examples of some bad reboots, and that's what I want to jump into first. And I want to jump in here with Snowpiercer, which was a movie that became a TV show. Have you guys ever watched Snowpiercer?
I know of the movie. I believe the original kind of IP is like a Korean thing or South Korean thing.
Yes. So the original movie was a movie, right? And it starred everybody's favorite Captain America. It was a great movie. It was directed by, give me 2 seconds here.
It's the same guy who did Parasite.
Yes, Bong Joon-ho. And he's actually in the movie. He makes a cameo appearance. And Chris Evans is the main character. But it really it creates this claustrophobic, post-apocalyptic world where you are trapped on this train. And throughout the movie, you feel like you're trapped on this train. And specifically at the back of this train where there are no windows, there's no light, there's kind of no hope, and this claustrophobic air just engulfs you from the first minute of the film. And I remember watching it for the first time, and they see daylight during a fight scene where they are going through a tunnel, and it's such a big moment, and it's a great fight scene that takes place. It's overall just a really good film, and like Bong Joon-ho really does a great job of capturing that post-apocalyptic like dread. And then it was picked up for a TV show. And I don't know, I think initially the TV show is pretty good. It takes place after the world has been frozen, so it's like directly after everyone gets onto the train. And it's all right, but it's gotten to the point now where we have 3 seasons expected of this show, and it's not going anywhere. Like, we have David Diggs, who is a great leading man, but it's really poor. In terms of the story, I feel like they're just dragging things out. So the second season was kind of like, oh, well, we found parts of the world that aren't frozen, which just immediately erases the movie from existence, because the movie takes place far into the future, and this series takes place like 7 years after people got on the train.
It makes it sound like, because I really enjoyed the film, I haven't touched the series at all.
Yeah.
But the great thing about the film is because it's a shorter format, it ups the stakes. There's urgency about what the people in the back of the train are trying to do when they're trying to get to the front of the train and kind of break apart the system.
So I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a major revelation at the end of the movie that the series just deletes. So like the perpetual motion nature of the train, in the series it's just, we keep repairing the parts, you know. But if you've seen the movie, you'll know that there's a really dark like twist at the end that as to how this train can function forever. And they just erased that in the TV show, which is a core premise of this whole thing, right? So it just becomes a bit milk toast at the end of the day. And yeah, it's just not very good. Like, I would recommend go and watch the movie before you watch the series, because the series is a lot more lighter, a lot more made for TV. I think it's like PG-13 even. So yeah, that's my first example of a bad reboot. What about yourself, Robin?
So here I guess I want to lump two together.
Yeah.
It would be The Lion King and The Little Mermaid reboots.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to get involved with the kind of behind the scenes, who was cast, race baiting, race swapping, whatever you want to call it. That stuff is irrelevant to me. I feel like Disney have been on this long journey of trying to make live action reboots or remakes of its kind of classic IP a thing. And to my mind at least, none of them have really stuck. Aladdin was poor. The Lion King was poor for very obvious reasons, because you had essentially photorealistic lions reacting to events that weren't really normal. So say, for example, when the stampede happens, the wildebeest stampede happens in the gorge, you see the terror on the animated version of Simba's face.
Yeah.
You do not see it in the live action version.
Because
You simply can't
express terror.
you can't really convey that really on screen. So you lose all that. And obviously there's a great scene with Nala, which obviously awoke a lot of things in a lot of men. Maybe I'm sure the first cohort of furries resulted from that scene.
Thanks, Disney.
So yes, I kind of understand it would be cool to see live action versions of these classic Disney characters, but a lot of the time it doesn't translate well. The same thing with The Little Mermaid. I think if anyone that's actually kind of dived underwater to the depths that these mer people are meant to live, you can't see in front of your hand.
No.
And the way it was looked odd. People's hair looked odd. I know it's very difficult to kind of do that with CGI.
But then that begs the question, why do it?
So
difficult.
The worst thing about The Little Mermaid, and I mean the 1989 version is a classic film, a classic for animation. Every frame is a painting. Even the background, you can see just the painstaking task of paint. And then you get to the modern version, and then like you said, why do this? The answer is obvious, because they want to make money.
Yeah.
But it loses so much of that initial artistry. And then what you get is basically you mentioned the milk toast. It's just an average film. Yeah. It's a film. I mean, they literally redid the whole Under the Sea song thing, and it's worse, right?
I mean, even Flounder looks like nightmare fuel from that movie. Like, I haven't watched The Little Mermaid, I'll be honest, but it just, like, the shots that I saw of that movie, I'm like, how is this?
You lose all the charm.
So for me, the point of a reboot or a remaster or a remake is that you take something and you want to make it better to introduce to a new audience. If you take something and then you just copy it kind of part for part, and the copies are just less than, it's not as good, then there's a remake that doesn't need to be made. It's a waste, right?
Yeah, I remember the opening scene of The Lion King.
Yeah.
The animated version is perhaps one of the best openings in any animated
super memorable,
ever.
Right?
Yeah. All that Jon Favreau did was just copied it and just made it the live action version.
And then it's not as good.
To me, and look, I'm not a director. I would never be a director. I'm not at that level of filmmaking. But that just seems really lazy. I'm sorry. And I think that's what stuck for a lot of people. that Disney is actually being lazy in their attempts to remake all these films.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, definitely Little Mermaid is, if you're just trying to hit point for point of the same movie, but it's less quality, then it makes no sense. Artistically, it's completely bankrupt.
And the weirdest thing for me, at least, is that they are still continuing.
Yeah,
there's a live action Snow White on the way.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be a few more.
Because people keep going to watch the movies, right?
I mean, I think it's also because people are curious to see what happens, right? They're curious to see Little Mermaid live action. Maybe it'll be good.
But I mean, surely they learned their lesson. I mean, after opening or weekend or the first month, surely those ticket sales die down. No one's going, and because of streaming platforms now, you don't really know what the after box office sales are going to be for a film anymore.
But the thing is, as long as they keep making the movie, that's evidence enough that these movies are making some money enough that they can keep bankrolling them. Unless Disney is in a just like a bad business spiral, you know. At the moment.
I mean, they could be. I mean, they do obviously do financials, but I mean, no CEO in the history of time has ever stood up and said, "We are suffering. Right. Buy more of our product."
Well, I mean,
they made a bad product. Buy it still.
They're building a whole Fortnite universe, a metaverse kind of thing. So they got money.
I suppose they do. I mean, yeah. So let's move on to Fan Four Stick. Who wrote that down?
I did.
Fan Four Stick, yeah. So if anybody's a fan of Fantastic Four, this was the 2015, 16?
15.
Remake of the franchise. Infamously, though, the Fantastic Four IP, in my opinion, has never had a good movie. I suppose we could say that the one with
Jessica Alba
was okay, right?
Oh, and Chris Evans. Chris Evans is going to be, I think, a theme throughout the entire
yeah, but he was the Human Torch, right?
Yeah.
Very young Human
Johnny
Torch.
Storm.
Yeah, so Fan Four Stick was just terrible. And what surprised me there is they had like a really good cast. Miles Teller.
Yeah.
What's his name now?
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan, yes.
Yeah.
Kate Mara, Jamie Bell.
Yeah, so it was a really good cast.
Yeah, good young actors.
But then it just deflated.
This poor movie was caught in a bad time for superhero films. It was before the Avengers, just changed what a superhero movie was, kind of made superhero movies popular and interesting and cool. You could do whatever you want with them. This was in a time when superhero movies were like, it has to be realistic.
Yeah, well, I blame the best superhero movie of all time for the reason why Fan Four Stick didn't work.
The Dark Knight.
Dark Knight ruined all movies for a decade after.
Yeah.
All superhero movies, should I say. Because everything had to be dark, everything had to be gritty, everything had to be real. And I remember watching a YouTube video kind of unpacking the behind the scenes as to why this film was the travesty that it was when it was eventually released. The director, Josh Trank, he had a very particular vision, far darker than what we saw in the actual end product.
Okay. And
for whatever reason, the studio chose to go a very, very different path. I mean, you can even see with the reshoots. There's one kind of sequence where Sue Storm has completely different haircut, completely different look to compared to the rest of the film, and that was because of the reshoots. It was just terrible choices made all around for this film.
Yeah, I think that also around that time, like Marvel was, I think people had high expectations of Marvel because we had like Avengers, the Tony Stark movies, and I don't think Marvel at that point was doing its different phases, phase 4, phase 5. It was kind of just going on, okay, well, we've got an Iron Man movie, we've got a Thor movie, we're going to have an Avengers movie, Captain America, all these sorts of things along the way. And then you have Fantastic Four, which, like, I remember watching the animated series when I was younger, and I loved that. I thought it was great. Yeah. So when they started turning these into movies, I was very excited, but none of them really took off.
The thing is that it should be, because the source material is so good, it should be a good movie. That's the thing that's so disappointing about the Fantastic Four movies, is that Fantastic Four is so cool and the characters are so unique and they have so much interesting things to say and do, and they have interesting villain. They have Doctor Doom. He's one of the best villains in Marvel. Surely they should come up with something that's good, and it's fallen flat every single time.
Yeah. Then Ghostbusters 2016.
Man. So Ghostbusters right now, after the first two classics, the IP is currently caught up in a remaster, remake, sequel kind of nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So they made Ghostbusters 2016, which was one of the first gender swap movies, in quote unquote, where the cast was traditionally, or the first movies were men. Obviously, the Ghostbusters main cast is super great, and then they tried the same thing but with women now, women comedians, and it doesn't matter that they tried to do the swap, and like Robin said initially, we're not going to get caught up in the conversation of what's better, should the character be played by a white actor or a black actor or a man, or it doesn't matter. What matters is it's boring and it's lame and it's not funny. The jokes don't hit in the 2016 Ghostbusters.
I mean, even if you had replaced that cast with men and obviously you adapted the script for it to be men, it still would have been bad.
Yeah. The story was terrible. The execution was terrible.
Yeah.
The CGI was horrible.
Yeah.
So then they kind of I think maybe 2 years ago they did another reboot. Where they said, okay, 2016 Ghostbusters never happened. Forget it. What happened? Melissa McCarthy? No, whatever. And then they kind of did a sequel continuation of the main Ghostbusters storyline, right?
Yeah.
Where now it's the grandson or the grandchildren of one of the Ghostbusters, of Egon, and they're kind of dealing with the legacy of their grandfather and his old school technologies, or what is this ghost catching thing stuff, and it's set in a small town, and it was. For what it was an okay movie, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't the Ghostbusters that we know and love, obviously, because those movies are classics.
Yeah.
But it was fine. And shooting off from there, now they're going to make a new one, right? Ghostbusters Frozen Empire or something. It's coming up.
Later this month, I believe.
This month or whatever.
Sometime this year.
So that's continuing from that storyline. So we're going to keep going. As long as the Ghostbusters make money, they're going to just milk the cow.
So I wonder if this new one is going to make money. Because I know that they've got some heavyweight hitters in terms of the cast. I saw there's also fan service with the old cast coming back, including Bill Murray. But I do wonder if it's going to hit. Because does anybody care about Ghostbusters aside from some old graying people like ourselves?
New Ghostbusters, none at all. I care about the original films, which were excellent.
Yeah, I want to see the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man again, right?
Yeah.
But actually, this not. Oh look, hey, it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that's referenced in.
Oh,
one
get
tiny
it?
scene.
Remember the Stay? The member bear. Remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
Yeah, we all loved him, right?
Remember Chewbacca?
Yeah, remember that. It just feels like that. It's just really. It becomes awkward to watch these things because it's like. Oh, okay, so we're referencing the old one. Okay, all right. Can we just forget about it and move on? I didn't see Denis Villeneuve going, oh, remember the old shields that they had in the original movie? They were all
shields,
blocky.
yeah.
Let's throw back to that. And if you want to throw back to that sort of stuff, you've got to do it in a tasteful way.
Yeah.
In a way that's I think... It's not a reboot, but I think Deadpool does it really well in terms of referencing other media. They do kind of lump it on after a while, but eventually it becomes part of that's the Deadpool meme is let's just reference other movies. Anyway, then Hellboy. I know somebody else wrote this, but I don't know anymore how many times this has been rebooted. As far as I was aware, there was one Hellboy movie back in the day with Ron Perlman as Hellboy, the titular Hellboy.
Yeah.
And now it's been rebooted so many times, I have no idea what's going on with that series.
So there was one reboot. The one I reference here is the reboot with David Harbour.
Yeah.
He's the sheriff in Stranger Things.
Yes.
And firstly, the casting came out of left field because he didn't seem like a right fit. And not to sound elitist, but his Hellboy doesn't look good enough. If that makes sense. His Hellboy, it looks a little ugly, actually.
Ooh.
I understand it's a demon and it's not meant to be necessarily look like a Calvin Klein model, but it just didn't really work. And I think also, unfortunately, visual effects weren't really that impressive, and the storyline was a little weak. And I think because the original films, Guillermo del Toro only directed 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because those were already kind of so iconic in terms of their visuals and special effects and stuff like that, this one kind of got lost in the fact that it couldn't live up to those standards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just why and oh.
The Guillermo del Toro Hellboy movies are they're good for what they are. I wouldn't say they're they reset cinema or do something crazy. They're very good, very they have really great character work. I love the interplay between the character, Hellboy and Abe Sapien and stuff like that, and very memorable moments. Like in the first one, the kiss scene between Hellboy and the love interest where everything goes on fire. That's really cool stuff, This Hellboy movie is like, it's like take that Hellboy and just strap a nuclear weapon to his back. There's a scene in this movie where Hellboy is riding a dragon and cutting the heads off just normal people with a flaming sword, and he's just going.
That was a dream sequence, right?
Yeah, but they still put it in there.
They still had to film it or make it.
And it's like my God, man, it's too much, Yeah, I don't know. It loses all of the heart of the Guillermo del Toro ones.
Okay, so now that we've had our moan session, I think it's time to talk about good reboots of late, aside from Dune. So at the moment on Disney Plus, if you are a subscriber, there is a new season or series that's out with new episodes coming every week, and it's called Shogun. The first episode of the series famously got 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I think, Louis, you've been watching this, and while you say that it's good, not every episode is 100%, but tell us more about why you think it's good.
It's based on the James Clavell series of books. He wrote a few of them. I guess the series is based on the first one. I don't know if they'll do the other ones. The books were kind of the first introduction to this kind of medieval, feudal era Japan that the West ever got. And a lot of Western media based on this stuff. So for interest's sake, the concept of the ninjas, as we know them, these guys, assassins with the black masks and the throwing stars.
Yeah,
they were popularized by James Clavell in these novels.
Oh, okay.
Right? In real life, that's not what ninjas look like or did. So that's kind of the major disconnect that we have here, right? Is that the source material of the show is kind of a fantastical representation of medieval Japan, and nowadays we know better. And I feel like the FX crew is trying to kind of conserve realistic authenticity, but they have to use the James Clavell books as the story.
Yeah.
And there's like a conflict in that in the background. The show itself is really well shot. The characters, like all the Japanese, the whole show is basically in Japanese, except for the scenes where they're speaking in Portuguese, where they speak English, where they use English to represent the Portuguese. The character work is great. The acting is great. The filming is really good. The outfits are great. Everything looks super great. But then there's every now and then there's just a few things that are just like, that doesn't make sense. I don't really understand how that's happening. For example, in the first episode, the whole premise of the first episode is to set up that Japan has a certain very stringent set of rules. The feudal system in Japan, you can't go out of it. If you don't bow to the lords, to the samas and the donos, if you don't bow to the lords, that's a joke in the first if you watch it, you get your head cut off, or you get boiled alive. It's a very dark, crazy feudal Japan. And then the main character guy, he very quickly learns the rules, because if he doesn't, he's gonna die. And he keeps saying, I can't die in this dark land. He has to live, right? And in the second and third episode, he kind of starts flouting these rules. He kind of starts saying, actually, I'm not going to pay attention to these rules. I'm going to do my own thing. And it's like, you set up that these rules were so important, and now they're not becoming so important. So it's like, again, it's like a conflict within itself. I haven't seen the whole series yet. I don't know if, obviously I can't say now at this point if it's going to be good. And maybe they pay off this kind of stuff later on. But yeah, I think it's definitely one of the more interesting shows out now. People are saying it's like a Game of Thrones killer, that it kind of hits that same spot that Game of Thrones did.
I think Game of Thrones committed suicide.
Yeah,
Season 8.
Season 8, yeah.
So yeah, let's hope it doesn't follow the Game of Thrones kind of line. It does its own thing. So far, so good with Shogun. We'll see how it goes.
And Robin, a recent reboot that you are a fan of or think was good?
So I have to shout out Netflix here.
Yeah.
Their live adaptations of anime have been very poor in the past. Cowboy Bebop immediately comes to mind.
Death Notes.
Death Note was bad, man.
I didn't even bother watching that. So their track record has been very poor in that regard. So much so that it gets memed quite often. But with the live action One Piece, and I was also one of those people that was kind of on the fence about it. I saw the trailers. It looked good, but I was in the back of my mind thought, maybe it's too good to be true. And I really think that they delivered. I waited a couple of weeks after it had been released on the platform to start streaming it. And yeah, I really loved the casting was really spot on. The kind of camaraderie and the chemistry between all the different members of the Straw Hat crew translated really well on screen. Also, as a South African, like the little nods to South Africa, a large chunk of the series was filmed in Cape Town. So, for example, some of the beaches you see in One Piece, you can tell those are South African beaches.
Yeah.
One of the scenes or a couple of the episodes, they are in some farmlands and they are chowing nachos. Oh, yeah. And I thought that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to kind of see those elements. And I think it's kind of pretty much well regarded as far as live action adaptations are concerned. So Netflix has done well there. That having been said, they had another dud recently with the Avatar: The Last Airbender.
So I wanted to bring that up because I've seen so many mixed reviews from that. I've seen a lot of people saying that like the first episode is a bit meh, but it gets better. But I feel like that's a very divisive in terms of like what people are thinking of it. Like there are some elements that I've heard from people that are just kind of like, yeah, they changed too much. This is a bad move. But on the same token, I've seen some people say, yeah, it's actually not bad. Like, in terms of, this is framed against some of the worst stuff, like Cowboy Bebop.
Not
Death
even
Note.
that. I mean, Avatar, the M. Night one.
Yes.
Has been universally pandered.
Yes. So, I mean, like, when you compare it against absolute tripe, it's going to be better. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that adaptation, I think a lot of the issues that people are having with it is that it's not necessarily keeping true to the source material. I'm not a big Avatar fan, so I can't really speak to it. It's, I guess, a generation after me. But one of the main antagonists in the series, for most of the episode of the animated series, he's kept in shadow. You don't see him. In the live-action adaptation, you see him in the opening trailer.
Oh, okay. Well, that's terrible.
And I think the actor who plays him, Daniel Day Kim, kind of... he kind of defended the decision. He said that people know who the character is because they've watched the animated series, which is a fair enough point. But let's stick true to the source material. Let this person operate from the shadows, because when the big reveal happens in the animated series... It's
more impactful.
Yeah, it holds up better. So, yes and no. So, I think they won people over the one with the live-action One Piece. I think that the Avatar one, and it appears that it is going to be greenlit for a second season.
Yeah.
So we are going to see more of it. Maybe they can correct some of the issues.
Maybe. So one that I want to bring up is a series, and it's a reboot of I don't even think that this was a well-received movie back in the day, but Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
How dare you, sir?
It was not good. I watched it again recently, and it was not good. All right, it was very like...
The one scene where they're married...
The one scene where they're married, yeah, definitely, where they run through a Home Depot. So this year there was a series that came out on Amazon Prime original called Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and it stars Donald Glover, who you might know as Childish Gambino, and Maya Erskine. And what they did with this is that they're not a married couple who discovers that each of them are spies. It's actually that they are enrolled into spyship, I guess, for want of a better word, and they take on new identities as an arranged marriage. And that is a really great jumping off point for this series, because you kind of get this friction between the two of them where they're doing a job, but they're not really married. And there's moments where there's a bit of romance that flutters, but it's just executed really, really well. And I will admit, I am a Donald Glover stan, and I love everything that he does, and I will watch a movie just because he has a 5-minute cameo in it. But this is really, really good. And I think what makes this even better is that it's kind of just using the name of the original movie, which wasn't very good, and it's kind of just using that as this way to ride people in. And when they get in, they're like, oh, this is not what I thought, but let me watch it anyway. It's extremely addictive to watch. It's on Amazon Prime. I don't want to give too much away because it is a spy movie or spy series. There's some twists and turns, but it's really, really, really good. And Donald Glover had a hand in creating it. You may have seen some clips on social media. If those made you laugh, I highly recommend you go and watch it. It's only got a 7 out of 10 IMDb rating, but I mean, considering the first one is the movie is not very good and not widely regarded as cinematic excellence.
I mean, who are you going to trust, the whole internet or us?
Yeah. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith is just really, really good. And I think it's, for me, what made it cool is that I don't have to think about the original film. I don't have to think about like, oh, what was the name of the company that they worked for? Oh, what was the plot line there? Like, are they still together? Am I going to see them appear? Like, at no point do I kind of go, oh, is Brandyn and Angelina just going to appear here in the show for a violent dance where they disarm each other? But yeah, I think that this is an example of where you don't use the source material and you make it your own thing, and it becomes something better than what the source material was, which is odd. I think I don't know how many.
I think it's great because it can stand alone.
Yeah, like that's a perfect way to put it. It does stand alone. You don't need the movie. Do I have to have seen Mr. and Mrs. Smith from the early 2000s? Absolutely not. In fact, avoid it. Save yourself the time. Save yourself the heartbreak. Yeah. Just leave it. Leave it.
So I got one.
Yeah,
and it could be a bit controversial. It's the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. Okay.
I don't know if it's controversial so much as
it's controversial because you said films.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
So the first one, and I'll also put the second one. You guys can disagree with me. The Star Trek Into Darkness. They were controversial because they changed a lot of what like the feeling of Star Trek. So Star Trek is about a lot of things. But what it's not mainly about is action, and you know, it's about politics and it's about society.
Oh, I thought it was just about Captain Kirk just slapping cheeks,
just betting all the blue girls.
Yes,
there is some of that, but less so. It's also about friendship and in the crew and technology, and Star Trek is about a lot of things. But what it's not about is about shooting scenes and fight scenes.
Yeah.
It's less of that. And the J.J. Abrams movie are mostly that. It's mostly action and it's mostly ships shooting. It's like, so he turned Star Trek into Star Wars so that it could be popular and he does it well.
Yeah.
Right? They are good movies. I would say they are good movies. And this is a way to kind of reboot something, change its kind of core and still make it palatable and still make it good, especially for a more modern audience. Especially for an audience that never got into Star Trek, because it is, as far as it's popular, it's also very niche. It's a very dense kind of sci-fi. That's probably why it hasn't been as popular as Star Wars, because Star Wars is very consumable. So he turned a very niche, very dense kind of sci-fi into something very consumable, and I think he did it well. J.J. Abrams has been, for what he did to that one Star Wars or to the prequel or the sequel series of Star Wars films. I mean, we can hate on him all we want, the Rey Skywalker stuff. That's all J.J. Abrams, But for the Star Trek stuff, for Star Trek and for Star Trek Into Darkness, he has a lot of. You can tell he has a lot of respect.
Yeah, he only has like a dozen lens flares in the whole.
There's so many lens flares. I think in the opening scene there's a lens flare. He loves it so much. Those are good films. I think the Star Trek Into Darkness, there was controversy because he changed Khan Noonien Singh, which is traditionally an Indian character, an Indian villain. He made him Benedict Cumberbatch, which is the whitest man ever.
Well, he wasn't sexy enough.
Yeah, he needs to be more sexy.
More sexy.
Wow. Benedict stands are going to come for us in the comments. Okay, so I know we have some more on here, but I want to move along quickly to upcoming and planned reboots that are happening, that we know are happening.
Oh,
so the first thing I want to shout out is Harry Potter, but as a series. So J.K. Rowling's series of books, which were turned into a series of movies, is now becoming a TV series. And I think that this is a horrible idea. Purely for the fact that because series that involve children are very problematic because the kids age faster than the production can come out. And to exhibit this, Stranger Things.
Yep.
Stranger Things is now at a point where all the kids who started in that show are now adults. Millie Bobby Brown is an adult. All of these kids are adults now. So are we going to go back to Stranger Things, which we know is getting a 5th season, where they are all children, or are we going to have to do hey, let's do it, and just time skip, and then they have to go back to wherever the place is, Hawthorne or whatever its name is. I can't even remember. But this is the problem with having your series based around children.
Well, isn't that what they did with the Harry Potter movies, the films?
Yeah, they had to like rush through the last 2 movies because at that point all of them were adults. They got beards and stuff. I mean, like facial hair.
Harold Potter.
Yeah. So now we're going to do this as a series, and like I think that Harry Potter is a IP that would benefit from a series, but I also don't think it's necessary because we've had now 7 movies. We had another 3 movies, was it with the Fantastic Beasts spin-off?
Yeah.
And the Crimes of Grindelwald, The Secrets of Dumbledore, The Secret Crimes of Grindelwald and Dumbledore.
What were they doing, you know?
Yeah, so I think that like this is just, I feel like J.K. Rowling needs a paycheck. And this is being sold. I mean, like when you're a billionaire, you know, you got to keep that B.
Yeah. Sure.
Keep that B. So I think that while it might introduce some new people to the series, is that really necessary?
I would have liked to have seen something different. They could have done, like, for example, like the Harry Potter game.
A new wizard.
Created a new universe around, you know.
Yeah.
I could fix the problem with them straight away. It's very easy. Every season is a different group of kids. So first years, second years, third years in a different season.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about the kid
following
kids growing up.
But they're not going to do that because they want to tell the story of the boy who lived.
So they're going to really get a new Harry, a new Hermione, a new Ron.
But I know how it ends.
We all know how it ends.
Though. He kills Voldemort, and you know.
The other problem with this is that it becomes a very limited series because it's based on a series of books which are complete and that has to end a certain way. Yeah. Like you can. Obviously, Hollywood can go and say, nah, we're going to do it a different way.
Going to follow his kids or whatever.
Yeah, like that is something that, I think it's called Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which there's a stage production of. Yeah. Like, that's what they should turn into a series, not Harry Potter again.
I've seen it already.
Yeah. Are we going to recast Hagrid? How are you going to recast, who's going to play Dumbledore?
Yeah.
Are we going to just get Jude Law and make him old and then...
They're going to do that.
Old?
They're going to do that. Watch, they're going to make him old.
Yeah.
They're going to make Jude Law old.
Yeah, and then it'll just be like, oh, okay. But yeah, so I think that this is a bad idea. It's too soon also. Like, the fact that I remember watching the Harry Potter movies as, like, an adult with the Goblet of Fire and the Order of the Phoenix, like... the fact that I can remember those still means that maybe you shouldn't be doing this as a series. Maybe you should just leave it for maybe another 10, 20 years and then you can pick it up again. Blade. Who wrote Blade?
Me write Blade.
You write Blade. Yes. I like Blade. I loved the 3 movies. As much as even as much as people rag on Trinity, I loved it because it was my introduction to Ryan Reynolds as a comedian.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I loved Blade Trinity.
So there our feelings diverge.
Okay,
But
fine.
the first Blade movie, it's like
Iconic.
seminal for me as a young man, because it was an R18 superhero movie.
Yeah.
Wesley Snipes kicked ass.
Brilliant soundtrack.
Yes, but back when raving was a thing.
That's so classic now.
And now they are rebooting it with Mahershala Ali, which I think is a great casting decision. He's got the acting chops, he's got the look.
But does he have the feeling of Wesley Snipes though?
Well, he's taller than Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes not that tall. Anyway, that's a different. that's another story. But I think you've got someone who's a brilliant actor who can probably inhabit whatever you need him to. However, the film has been in development hell.
Yeah.
Because I think it was announced pre-pandemic, and obviously pandemic happened. A whole bunch of rejigging at Marvel Studios because of some poorly performing Phase 4 and 5 films. And I think the original director dropped out. I think the second director dropped out as well. And now it's kind of in this limbo. From what I understand, it's still being made. Mahershala Ali is still attached to the project, which is still good news. I just hope that they ensure that they keep the R18 rating for the film.
Yeah.
And that they just let Mahershala do his thing. Let the man do his thing. And hopefully it'll be a good film.
So I'd also hope that the big bad from that is well cast and just well written. Because
But Deacon Frost.
Please no. Please no. Stephen Dorff, as much as I love him as an actor, I thought that his portrayal as the big bad was horrific. Absolutely horrific.
But as long as we have some epic lines, I can't say them on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because they have to be
swearing.
bleeped out.
Yeah.
But there are some epic lines in Blade.
Yeah. I love the Blade. Like I said, I loved all three movies. I'm excited for a remake. I've been excited for a remake since they stopped making them. And yeah, I'm keen. I'm absolutely keen.
Here's hoping it comes out.
Yeah, Louis, a remake. That
So
you selected that's coming out.
I know. Hold on. Give me a sec. So they're remaking Nosferatu, right?
The original Dracula movie.
The original Dracula movie. They're making one this year. I need to find just the. Here we go. It's being made by Robert Eggers. And being produced by Studio 8. So, I mean, they're getting some good talent behind this thing. So, if we can go back. So, Nosferatu, the original Nosferatu, is like the first ever horror movie, right? Ever. And it changed film in the way that you shoot certain scenes. And, you know, the scenes of him coming up the stairs with his claws out, it's like memorable, super memorable, classic. It's a version of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it was a completely silent film.
Yeah, it was.
So they had the dialogue was in text that came after. So like, you know, that's old school. So
original movies.
Imagine that movie done in 2024 and what that would look like. Because I imagine a lot of the initial shock at that time, or the kind of the stuff that made people scared of what they were, like the horror of what they were seeing. Nowadays, it doesn't hit us as well. Obviously, the horror as a genre has changed. You know, jump scares aren't really in anymore. Nowadays, people don't even get scared by jump scares. They're just like, oh, another jump scare.
They're more annoying than anything nowadays.
So now, what are they going to do to still make Nosferatu and still make it scary? It's either not scary, or they try to live up to the original version and you know, or they really figure something else out and it's scary.
So I think that you have to go super dark with this because, for one, all Dracula movies in the last couple of years, or anything based on Dracula, has just been awful.
Yeah.
The BBC series was more of a comedy than anything else. I can't actually remember the last Dracula film that I watched. So I was like, oh, wow, this is really good.
The Gary Oldman one was the last one that I can remember, and that was like a retelling of the book, right?
Yeah.
And that one wasn't the most amazing film ever.
So I think you have to lean into the darker aspects of this.
Luckily, Robert Eggers is the man for the job.
I think
so he made The Witch, he made The Lighthouse, and he made The Northman. So he's So his track record is like he's just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, like if he were to do something similar to like the Lighthouse, because that movie is, I don't know, you get this claustrophobic.
Yeah, you have to keep it black and white. I think.
Yeah.
You can't not.
And he does well with black and like the Lighthouse. I think is honestly one of his best films. Like people can tell me The Witches, I disagree. I think it's the Lighthouse. So I think if he takes that claustrophobic, that very small, we're stuck in one place. There's weird stuff that's happening, but it's not really being explained. And then halfway through it, you drop this. Oh, there's a creature that is inhabiting this island or this place with you. I think that would just.
So I'm reading some of the cast, and I'm getting excited. Yeah. Okay. So Count Orlok, which is the Count Dracula. Yeah. He's being played by Bill Skarsgård, who did
It.
Pennywise. Yes, he did Pennywise. Which that's a really great kind of character actor. He does very. He has a lot of
that will make
emotion,
it scary.
Right?
That will make it scary because his portrayal of Pennywise was the best part of the remakes of it.
So Nicholas Hoult is playing the main character guy. So in Dracula, it's Mina Harker and the boyfriend of Mina Harker are the ones who get kind of lured in by Dracula and they get kind of possessed and stuff and so the Mina Harker, the Ellen Hooter, which is Mina Harker's character, is being played by Johnny Depp's daughter, Lily Rose Depp.
That's a no from me.
And
after The Idol, it's a no from me.
Yeah, she was in The Idol, right? The weird one. But the most exciting casting is Willem Dafoe. He's coming back because Robert Eggers loves Willem Dafoe. He's on all his movies. He's playing Dr. Van Helsing.
Oh.
So that's kind of cool.
Okay.
I would like to see something.
I'm keen. Bring it on.
I think this one could be really cool. We'll wait for a trailer to check it out. Will it be scary? Will it be kind of gothic and interesting to look at? We'll see. We'll see what happens.
So, on here, The Crow. So this is an interesting one. So I loved the Crow movies when I was a kid. I didn't put this on the list, just so everyone knows. But I loved those movies growing up. And obviously I was very sad at the death that resulted from that with Brendyn. In fact, I think I idolized that guy way too much when I was younger. I was like, oh, this guy's super goth and cool. He's so cool. But what are we expecting from this remake?
I'm a little
tentative because they have tried this before, haven't they? They have tried to remake The Crow, and it just didn't pop off. So that's a bit of an iffy one.
Because I think it is Bill Skarsgård as well, right? He's the titular character.
I believe so.
For me, it doesn't I don't see him as that character.
Yeah, it's Bill Skarsgård. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is also one of those IPs that if you touch it, you've got to knock it out of the park. If
also,
you
The Crow is a very 90s film.
As well. Like, it's sort of like if you were to remake Spawn. Yes. Right? Like, I don't think it would translate today. Like, I also think that you wouldn't be able to get away with a lot of the stuff that Spawn did. Like, that movie was messed up if you go back and watch it. And I don't know if The Crow can kind of exist today without being, without being cancelled.
Yeah, The Crow, that movie opens up with some really serious stuff. You know, what happens to his girlfriend and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What happens to him. Nowadays Hollywood tries to steer away from sexual abuse and sexual violence and stuff like that.
Especially given it's a real problem in that space.
In Hollywood, right? We have the Me Too movement and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So will they touch on that or will they change it completely? You know, how much of the original story will they change because it's just not stuff that Hollywood is willing to touch anymore? You know, with the sexual violence and all that. So we'll see. You know, and will it have the same impact after the fact, if they change all that kind of stuff?
I mean, I think The Crow is referred to as a cult classic for a reason. So, big balls, take it on. Then one that's coming out soon is Roadhouse, remake of Roadhouse.
Yes, it looks completely unhinged. I don't know if you guys saw the trailer.
With Jake Gyllenhaal, who's entering his action hero phase, which I love.
And Conor McGregor.
Which is also weird.
Also, he doesn't seem like a very good actor, but I'm sure the action and the fight sequences will be amazing.
Maybe he'll surprise us like Batista did, you know? Because Batista, when he got cast for Guardians of the Galaxy, he was like, I'm going to acting classes. He rolled into it. Now he's like a damn good actor.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be one of those films where you just go and enjoy it. It's not, don't try and read too much into it.
Yeah.
And I think also the original is also a bit of a cult classic as well.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it holds up against the original with R.I.P. Patrick Swayze.
Yeah. So finally, in stuff that's upcoming, we are getting a new Fantastic Four movie. We don't know much about it. We know the cast, which includes Pedro Pascal and a couple of other big names. We spoke about this at the top, that there's not been a good Fantastic Four movie. And now we've got a new one coming this year.
The last thing of Fantastic Four that happened was that...
Fantastic?
No, in the last Doctor Strange movie, you get to see Mr. Fantastic being played by... I forgot the name of the actor. He's from The Office. But yeah, that was the last... You see Reed Richards in the last... the
smartest man alive before he's just killed.
Right.
Yeah.
But that whole movie is full of that, right? That's why that movie was disappointing for a lot of people. That they bring these really cool characters and then just make them lame immediately after you introduce them. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I don't think they've announced a Doctor Doom or a villain for this one.
Not yet, no.
The only people we know are Pedro Pascal, who's playing Mr. What is it? Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to say Mr. Incredible. And then we have Eben Moss Bachrach, who's from The Bear.
Yeah.
He's playing The Thing. Then Vanessa Kirby, who's Miss Invisible Girl. And Joseph Quinn, who is the Human Torch you might recognize from, ironically, Stranger Things. So that's the Fantastic Four. And something that I do want to just point out is that the first poster we got for this is very like 70s, and it reminds me like Fallout-ish, like back in the 70s. And I wonder if they're not going to take it like way back, sort of like what they did initially for the Eternals, where they're like, oh, these people have been here for forever, and now it's modern day after the Avengers, and now we're only hearing about them.
So I think, not to get to new rock stars with it and dissect every single frame.
Yeah.
But I believe that it will be set in like the 70s.
Yeah.
There are a couple of hints in the poster that just say what specific year it's going to be set in.
Yeah.
But I think instead of getting radiation from some kind of solar storm or whatever happens in the comic books, it'll be a time traveling thing. So they get thrust forward into the future as a result of this kind of cosmic radiation they encounter.
Yeah. Okay. That would make sense, because the Marvel is doing that whole timey-wimey thing. I mean, with He Who Shall Not Be Named.
And I mean, you see the Fantastic Car in the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just or that's a nod to something that's going to happen.
That's going to happen. I mean, like I think they have to introduce them in some other way than just like, oh, hey, here's the Fantastic Four, because I think at this point everybody knows who they are and how bad the movies for it have been. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with it. It seems like the earliest release we're going to get for it is 2025. July 25th, 2025. I don't know if that's going to remain in place. It could change between now and then. I mean, movies have a tendency of getting delayed, much like video games and series and all that sort of stuff. So we'll have to wait for 2025 to see it. Then I want to wrap up by talking about what reboots and remakes we'd like to see. And there's something on this list that makes me smile: The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Who put that there?
Oh, that was my submission.
With the Sean Connery movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it had the potential to be really cool. I mean, obviously the source material is from Alan Moore, who famously wrote Watchmen as well.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes these characters from well-known kind of stories and mythology and kind of puts them all together in this awesome kind of shared universe. I think the issue that film had was, one, its CGI was horrible.
Yeah.
there's a very famous scene where Dr. Jekyll has taken on one of the henchmen who gets a hold of his kind of secret serum that allows him to turn into Mr. Hyde. And he takes he just chugs like a gallon of it and turns into this massive monster. It just looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think there were so many cool elements to that. Like, for example, Captain Nemo's ship, the Nautilus. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think that could have been explored a bit more. So it was a piece of media that got a decent enough treatment. But I think if it got the real love and attention it needed, perhaps even in the form of a series, maybe.
I think it could work
well.
I think it could work as a series. It's like introducing to each of the extraordinary gentlemen. Like, I would love something that's just a bit more focused on like Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
Like, I love that character.
He's actually the villain in the movie. He's one of the bad guys.
Yeah. So I mean, like, that was disappointing for me growing up. I loved that character and I wanted more of him. And then obviously, we all know what happens. Yeah. Then one that I would like to see, and this might be, I don't know, maybe people aren't, but I would like to see Speed being remade. The Keanu Reeves movie from back in the day where the bus must go 60 miles an hour or else a bomb explodes. I don't know if that would play in today's society, especially in the US where there's a lot of fears around terrorism and all that sort of stuff. But I would love to see a Speed movie remade with that concept of there is a bomb on a bus and somebody has to maintain a speed. And there were some really great moments from that original movie. Speed 2 Cruise Control, I have resigned to the back of my mind.
Well, obviously,
except for
there's
the
no
end.
Keanu Reeves in it.
Yeah, it's just terrible. It's a terrible movie. So I would like to see Speed remade. I think that it might be a fun little bit of action. Maybe have Keanu Reeves be the bad guy. You know, Hollywood. Free to take my ideas as long as you pay me for them. But yeah, I would like to see the Speed movies remade. Louis, what about you?
So nowadays, you can't go anywhere without hearing about Helldivers 2, right?
Yeah.
And a big kind of influence of that game, especially it's the kind of the stuff that really interested people about it, which is it's in the marketing and the lore behind the game, was Starship Troopers. Based on a very anti-military, anti-government book. The Starship Troopers film has some of the best CGI for its time. The bugs look great, still do to this day. And it turns the book that was so like such a parody and such satire into a sci-fi action movie. A really good one.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that remade. You know, it's enough time now. Let's go back to Klendathu. Let's kill some bugs. The only good bugs are a dead bug. It's time to do the jump. It's time to to get back in there. I feel like nowadays with what is happening in the world, it's a really good time for a good anti-war movie that just makes fun of governments, just makes fun of the military. They just, and just shows you the horrors of war, but also does it in a way that just has you saying, man, it's all just a big joke. And I think a good Starship Troopers remake could be that movie. So yeah, let's do it, Hollywood.
Who's your Johnny Rico?
It has to be like a Timothy Chalamet is my Johnny Rico.
No. Warner Brothers got him tied up to that long-term contract.
It has to be like a really like gruff, young, leading actor man.
Austin Butler.
I wouldn't mind a good Austin Butler in there.
Sure. Oh no.
And it could be a
well, I
good
mean, let me not say anything else. That's spoiled.
Robin, what about yourself?
Okay, this is also a bit of a selfish choice. The 13th Warrior. So, anyone that remembers the 13th Warrior, we will and enjoyed it, will immediately be friends. So it's based on a Michael Crichton film book called Eaters of the Dead. And the title of the book doesn't actually portray what the book is actually about. So, the story of a Middle Eastern kind of philosopher, writer, explorer, Ibn Fahlalad, and his experience of Norse people on his travels. The kind of backstory of it was that he looked at a sultan's or some higher up's wife he wasn't supposed to, and he gets exiled. His exile was to go and explore and make contact with the Norse people, as they referred to at the time. So one of the great things I really loved about the film is what role language plays.
Yeah.
So because he doesn't speak the language of the Norse people, which is also a bit of a smorgasbord of different languages because of the fact that they go and raid all these kind of villages and appropriate different cultures within their own and mix and match and things like that. It's really a genuine melting pot as far as what that culture becomes.
Yeah.
So him learning that while they're going on this kind of treacherous mission, and kind of his role in that and how he grows as a person and as a kind of a warrior, that was really cool to see. Also, I love the kind of mythology aspects of it, and to kind of see that translated modern day would be really cool. Again, I think a longer format series, maybe 6 to 8 episodes of an hour long, would really do it justice as far as kind of exploring his story, kind of Norse mythology around like the fireworm, and also kind of talking about cannibalistic tribes and things like that. That's all kind of cool stuff that I'd love to see explored. I also think, as much as I love Antonio Banderas as an actor, it would be great to see a Middle Eastern actor kind of take up the role of Ibn Fahlalad. So that's my selfish choice.
Okay. I have one more, and that is 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I think the reason I want to do this, it's not that 2001: A Space Odyssey was a bad movie. I think it's very iconic. It kind of reshaped how sci-fi is filmed, how special effects are filmed. It's a very great movie, but I think that because it's old, a lot of people don't want to watch it. I mean, it's also called 2001: A Space Odyssey. We're way past 2001 at this point. But I think that if you took a similar treatment to what happened with the Alien movies, the sequels, I guess we can call them, where we focus on, or I suppose they're prequels actually, where we focus on how the aliens were made, how they were born, Prometheus, Covenant, those sorts of films. I think if you did something similar to that, like, I don't know, a mining crew coming across the ship from a Space Odyssey, like, I think if you were to take that sort of tact, where it's like a discovery, a sequel, indirect sequel rather, because I know that there was ultimately a sequel, even a prequel, like just taking that sci-fi and that horror that movie portrayed, I think that would be fantastic and introduce a lot of people to that original story and showcase where like the roots of modern science fiction films comes from.
Especially with AI and what it is nowadays.
Exactly. HAL 9000, one of the most terrifying villains in cinema, in my opinion. So I think if you were to remake that, and I hate to say it, but I think like somebody like Denis Villeneuve could do that. He could take that movie and treat it with the care that it deserves and turn it into a modern classic.
Yeah, because he's done it twice now with obviously Dune and also with Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And he's been successful at both.
So I think if he were to take something like that, and I mean that movie was filmed in 1968, so that's ages ago, and I think that if you were to just take that and bring it up to modern speed with what we know now about universe, space travel, like I think you could get a really, really great sci-fi movie out of that. No disrespect to Stanley Kubrick, of course, but I think that it would be, it's time. It's time to bring back something that's a classic for a reason and expose a new audience to these stories that were told. And maybe somebody will go back and watch the original films. I think that's happening with Dune right now. A lot of people are watching the David Lynch films, or the David Lynch film, sorry. And maybe it's not hitting with them, but I think in the case of 2001, I think it would hit people, and they would respect the original film as well. Robin, what else have you got on your list?
So, one of the other ones that I wanted to bring up was The Island of Dr. Moreau.
That is a fantastic movie. I think it is. I'm not even being like sarcastic. I thought it was amazing.
Are we talking about the one with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer?
Yes.
See, I am not of the same opinion. And that's difficult for me to say because I'm a huge Val Kilmer fan.
Yeah.
But I think it just kind of missed the mark. I think it was also one of those productions that was kind of mired in issues and didn't really fulfill the promise it was meant to.
The concept, though, is what I loved about it.
Yes, very much so.
I watched it when I'm not even a film critic now, but I wasn't really as clued up with movies as I was back then when I saw it, but I loved the concept of it. I feel like some people have tried to redo that concept with a mad doctor who's creating creatures and trying to make the perfect human. Like, I think that those types of movies do sort of exist. Actually they don't. I feel like Dr. Moreau was like the one and done. Nobody tried it again.
After that, there were not parodies, but like allusions to it. I mean, Spy Kids had that. Like the movie solidified the trope.
Yeah.
And now the trope is used again and again and again, but nothing has ever been done that kind of touches on the movie again, you know?
What I would like to see is it potentially modernized in a way. So the technology or the splicing of human genetics to animal genetics, you could, for example, fold in something like CRISPR technology.
Yeah.
As far as like how that process would work. Perhaps it's like CRISPR on steroids or CRISPR that's been mutated into something it wasn't supposed to, and kind of this is the fallout of it.
Yeah.
So I think you can modernize it in a way that's sophisticated, because I remember watching the film and I just felt dirty afterwards. It just didn't.
I mean, it accomplishes that, though. That's what it's supposed to accomplish. It's like, I don't know if any of you have ever watched 8mm with Nicolas Cage. Like, that movie left me feeling dirty. Like, for good reason. But, I mean, yeah, it's. I think if it gets that across and makes you feel that way, I think it's accomplished what it set out to do.
Yeah, so I don't know. For me, I think it's such an interesting concept and it's such a great book that it does need to be, I think, re-examined and potentially modernized, like I said, perhaps made a bit more sophisticated. And yeah, I think could do quite well.
And Louis, your final pick for what remake reboots would you like to see?
I think in the early 90s and early 2000s, there was a lot of really famous South African films being made. We have, Sarafina and Tsotsi and, things like that, Cry Freedom,
Cry the Beloved Country.
Drum was sick.
Oh, yeah, wow.
And these are movies that kind of show a different time in South Africa. A time in South Africa that's nowadays, I think, newer generations only hear about or they read about in textbooks. But this is a very exciting, also very sad time in South Africa. And we've kind of forgotten about these movies. I guess some could say that no one cares anymore about, the experiences of people during apartheid South Africa, but I don't think that's true. And I think you can still do it in a way that's not, and politicians use it a lot as a kind of a escape card and something like that. But I think there's still a history there, and you could do it properly if you go back and you remake some of these movies. Drum. I would love to see Drum remade nowadays.
Yeah.
I would love Netflix to just take Drum and remake it with modern actors and just show us Sophia Town as it was back in those days.
And South African actors, please.
Yes, and so that would be awesome. Like, I would love to see that. More of that, please. More classic South African films being remade. That would be great.
So I agree with you, but I would, like, for me, I mentioned Cry the Beloved Country. Like, so I did that book as a set work in high school. I think most people in South Africa have done it at some point as a set work. And what I loved about that movie was it showed, like, at a time where South Africans were divided, how South Africans could come together of different races and find a kind of common ground, even though maybe they shouldn't have been able to do that. And I think it's that triumph of the human spirit, and I think that's what a lot of these classic South African movies have, is that triumph of the human spirit. And I think that now, in modern society, I think we need that a lot of the time, not just in South Africa, but in other parts of the world where wars are currently going on. And it's very hard to find glimmers of hope. And I think that, like, South Africa, because of our history and how recent that history still is, I think movies like this speak to a lot more people than just us here who know where Sophia Town is and who know, like, about know about Sarafina and have watched Cry the Beloved Country 100 times or read the book 100 times because we had to. I think that it showcases another side of South Africa that's seldom showcased in mainstream media outside of the country.
Yeah, and also these films were made in a time when the people who were making them, they didn't have the resources, and they didn't have as much support as they did. Like, could you imagine if the people who made Sarafina had Netflix behind them, bankrolling things, and how these stories could really go further than just South Africa. They could do more, and I think there's potential there for something. They just need somebody to do something about it, And so far we have nothing. I think there could be something really cool there.
Yeah, so I think that's a lot of movies and series that we have discussed today. I'm a bit mediated out at the moment. But we will have all of these lists within this blog post, as always. You can click through them. You can see, we'll have links to the IMDb pages of all of these pieces of content. I think that if you haven't seen any of these movies that we've spoken about, good or bad, I recommend you go and check them out, just so that you have them under your cap, because how do you know if a movie is good or bad if you've never seen a bad movie, a truly bad movie, or if you've seen a truly good movie? I think we can all agree, go and watch Dune Part 2. It is a spectacle for the eyes. I think Robin and I both mentioned there's a scene right at the beginning of the film that just, you just look at it and you're about to watch a movie.
Yeah.
You're about to watch something spectacular. So, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and YouTube, and visit www.htxt.co.za for regular news and reviews of technology. From myself, Brendyn Lotz, cheerio. From Robin-Leigh, Chetty.
Take care, everyone.
And from Luis Monzon.
Bye, guys.